Hello, dear authors and invited guests. Welcome to the technical session 2B. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the fifth international conference on information and communication technology for intelligent systems through Zoom on behalf of ICTIS 2021 and the Global Knowledge Research Foundation. We are thankful to everyone present on this platform to go along with us digitally for the conference in this unpredictable circumstances of COVID-19 and making this conference more productive. Also, we wish everyone and their families a protected time and we all will together pass this soon. We hope you will enjoy 2 days of the knowledgeful and interactive sessions. Just before we get started, I would like to introduce you all to the session chair for this session. The chair of this session, Dr. Vivek Tiwari. He is an assistant professor of computer science and engineering at International Institute of Information Technology, Naya Raipur. His research interests include data mining, warehousing, pattern mining and warehousing, data analysis, pattern retrieval and presentation, machine learning, big data. And we have our another session chair here, Dr. Pramod Patel. He is a professor in Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering, IES University, Bhopal. Thank you so much, sir, for chairing the session. Now, I would like to start with the papers. Also, there is a special note for the presenters. You will be given 8 minutes for the presentation and rest 2 minutes will be for Q&A. On 7 minutes, I will raise a gentle reminder and on the 8th minute, your presentation will be over. So, and I request everyone, while the presentation is going on, other participants kindly be muted. Okay, our first presenter is our first presenter is Kamsali Mani Teja Achari. His paper is about a neural network-based customer churn prediction algorithm for telecom sector.
I'm sharing my screen. Can I share my screen?
Yes, you can.
Thank you. Okay. Is my screen visible?
Yes, Mr. Teja, you can go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Hello everyone. My name is Mani Teja. So today I'm going to present the neural network model based customer churn prediction for telecom sector, authored by me and co-authored by Dr. Sumitra Binu and Thomas Katie. The paper ID is 424. So the contents which I'm going to present is introduction, the problem definition, objective.
Mr. Teja, sorry for interruption. As Harsha already given only 8 minutes. So please, you can skip those things, focus on your methodology, your proposed work and outcome. That will be better to everyone to learn from you.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Okay. Like a little bit introduction is like customers are important for telecom and everywhere. So churn is nothing but exit from an industry. So in telecommunication industry, it might lead to a bankruptcy. So this is the basic introduction which I have worked on, the domain which I have chosen. So the problem definition is from the literature survey. I observed that many authors have not used different activation functions or like studied many different activation functions to maximize accuracy to my chosen domain area. So another thing is the some of the authors have not considered SMOT algorithm for imbalanced data set. So the objective is today build a neural network, different neural networks with different activations to study the different performance metrics on these neural networks. So the data is collected from Kaggle, which have different, the classes are churn and non-churners. So the data pre-processing steps are, so I have handled missing values and I removed noise. So the data is formatted using minmax scalar, and it is converted into dummies using pandas library. So the imbalance data is handled using synthetic minority oversampling techniques, MOT algorithm, and the minority class is oversampled. So the neural network is not biased towards the major class. So the feature selection is done using mutual info classif function from scikit-learn library. So the proposed methodology is like I have built up 3 neural network models, and I have set different parameters, and I train the neural network model, and I tested it on unseen data. Coming to the proposed methodology, I have used artificial neural networks for my paper. So coming to artificial neural networks, it works well on the data. It works well on the compared to machine learning. It works well on the data, which has more amount of data. So I have used ANN for this paper. So coming to the model building part, I will explain in future slide, in the next slide. So I have done some hyperparameter tuning for hidden layers and for batch size and dropout rate using random search and grid search methods. So I'll explain this here. So I have trained this data for 100 epochs, and so the model has been evaluated using accuracy and ROC curve and precision and recall. So coming to the implementation part, so in my first model, in my first model, I have implemented in my first model, in the sense this architecture I have implemented 40 neurons in the first layer, 20 neurons in the second layer. In the third layer, I have not used any neurons. In 2 layers, I have implemented TANH activation function with sigmoid as output in the output layer, with dropout rate is 0.3, and I have used kernel initializer to initialize weights with Gloret normal. So coming to second model, I have used 40 neurons and 20 neurons and 10 neurons in third layer, and ReLU as my activation function in all 3 layers, with the dropout rate of 0.2, with kernel initializer in all 3 layers as He uniform. And learning rates I have set to 0.005 and 0.001. And coming to model 3, I have used 40 neurons in first layers. In second layer, I have used 20 and 10, and ELU exponential linear unit.
We got it. You just
Okay, I'll skip to results part. So in the results part, what I have observed is the model one has learned better, but compared to the tester, it has not performed well. But model 3 and model 1 has not performed well. As we can see, model 4 has performed well because there is less error rate between training and test accuracy. So we can see that the model 4 is performed well compared to other 3 models. So compared to the coming to the precision, the classification report, precision, recall, and F1 score, ASU score. Here also we can see that model 4 is performing well with SAILU activation function. You can see that the precision is 0.87 and 0.83 and 0.85. So the model 4 is performing well, and it is learning faster compared to all 3 models with the SAILU activation function compared to other 3 models. As you can see, this is my confusion matrix for 4 models. Here, the total errors combined is false positives and false negatives. You can see that the first model with TANH activation function has more errors, like 316 errors, and second model has 307 errors. And model 3 with ELU activation function has 336 errors, but model 4 has less errors with SAILU activation function, which has only 305 errors. What I found is model 4 is performing better with less errors and with less generalization error compared to all these 3 models. So I can conclude that in my research, what I found is that SAILU activation function is performing better compared to TANH and ReLU and ELU, and also it has less generalization error and less errors. This is.
Thank you. I have one question. Please go back. Open your slide, please. Open your slide, please.
Oh yeah, wait. I have to share it again. 1 minute. Okay, which slide?
Go to implementation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is my observation? So it is a learning. Okay, don't think like that I am teacher or you are a student, or we are all are equal. We all are equal.
Yeah.
So my question is that in the further slide, you have claimed model 4 is better than the rest of the model. Agree?
Yeah.
So question is that if I ask why, what is the factor and why the model 4 is performing better? Then you are saying because of the CELU activation function you have used, and your conclusion is that because of that activation function, the model is performing better. But you can observe over here.
Yeah.
If I say no, a model 3 is better. Model 4 is not better. Why? Because model 4, the learning rate is different. So what is my contribution, or what I want to say, when you claim something, this is better because of that, then you have to see all the model, the 4 model you are using, you must test on the same background.
Yes,
Only a
sir,
single, all the other all parameters you should keep the constant, and one parameter you should change it. Then you can claim only that because of that it is performing better. Here,
yes,
many
sir.
parameters you are parallelly you are changing. The
Yes, sir.
activation function you are changing, and layer 3 neurons you are changing, dropout you are changing, and learning rate you are changing. Then
Yes,
you
sir.
cannot claim because of CELU it is performing better.
Yes, sir. But yes, I can take it that, yes, I have taken that into consideration. But what I've done is I have used hyperparameter tuning. So these are the best values for I have got for each of my architecture. So I have used these are the parameters for my architecture. That's why
Okay,
I have
that's
included
okay.
these numbers.
That's okay. Your work is acceptable. Okay, but in the future, when you go for the journal paper or a thesis writing or anything, you have to analyze. You have to all the perspective you have to consider for the analysis purpose. Then you should claim or reach to the conclusion. Otherwise,
Yeah,
it will always be a questionable marks.
yeah. I will take
Otherwise,
that into
everything okay.
consideration.
Okay. Thank you from my side. Okay.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Maniteja. Our next presenter is Mr. Anil S. Nayak, speaking about an effective interactive ICT tool for teaching and learning through Google Meet. I guess Anil is not here. So moving ahead with our next presenter, Ms. Nandini, and her paper is about video shot retrieval using multi-feature approach. Hello, Ms. Nandini.
Yeah.
Yes, you can start.
Thank you, ma'am. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Namaste one and all. Myself Nandini HM. I am doing research under the guidance of Dr. Chetan HK, Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Maharaja Research Foundation, Mysuru, India. And my paper title is Video Shot Retrieval Using Multiple Feature Approach.
Nandini, 1 minute. Research scholar means what? The PG or PhD research scholar?
I'm PhD research scholar.
Okay, thank you. Always mention PhD scholar means what?
Yeah, okay, sir. Okay, thank you. This is the outline of my presentation. As we are in digital era, advancement in technologies and usage of internet have led to explosion of video data on storage platforms. Consequently, such huge repositories must be accompanied by efficient video analysis techniques. Traditional video search schemes are based on annotated textual information of videos, where user has to give the textual queries for the video retrieval. Sometimes it shows limited retrieval capability when they lack to understand the video content. At that time, the videos which are not annotated properly becomes practically useless. Thus, content-based video retrieval approaches have attained vital consideration in research field, which exploits the content of the video for the retrieval purpose. In literature, there are various algorithms which extracts the video based on their content, but retrieving videos as per user expectation and attaining appropriate results still need to be addressed. And even there are some inefficiency and limitations in the existing approach, which demands for the content-based video retrieval. And content-based video retrieval can be used in sports video analysis, digital museums, news event analysis, intelligent management of web videos, and video surveillance. These are some of the related works where Kannan et al. Have used a combination of spatial and temporal features for video retrieval. Naveen Kumar and Reddy have used motion features and HSV color histogram features as a hybrid feature. Asha and Madhavya have used combination of motion, color, and texture features. Vishnu et al. Have used a texture feature like local binary pattern variance.
Miss Nandini, I'm audible?
Yes.
We have a limited time, so you can skip it. Focus on your approach, your work, and the results.
Okay. Okay, sir. So this is the framework of the proposed methodology, where we have considered the keyframes extracted from the shot-based method. So basically, we divide the videos into number of shots. From each shot, we extract a representative frame called as keyframes. And we have considered those keyframes for feature extraction, which represents a video clip. So we have extracted multiple features from the keyframes to construct a histogram. And the obtained histograms are concatenated, and we have constructed multiple feature vector out of it. And we have stored in the database. This comes in the offline phase. Whereas in online phase, randomly we select the keyframe as the query frame, and it undergoes the same feature extraction procedure. In order to retrieve the similar videos, we establish a distance measure. So as I said, we are using two different approaches to retrieve the, to extract the features. One is constructing histogram using HSV color edge approach, and other method is constructing histogram using local binary cumulative sum variance approach. In the first method, we are transforming the RGB image into HSV color space. Out of the three channels, we are considering value channel as it stores brightness intensity values, and we compute Sobel gradient magnitude for the value channel to construct the histogram. And in the second method, we are constructing histogram using local binary cumulative sum variance approach. This diagram shows how we have constructed the LBCSV pattern. Say for example, this is a grayscale keyframe where we have divided the frame into 3x3 blocks, and we have used basic LBP approach to transform the grayscale values into binary values. So we have considered central pixel as the threshold to transform the neighboring pixels into binary values. To the obtained binary values, we are applying cumulative sum, and finally we are calculating variance for each cumulative sum at a particular pixel position. So this is the histogram that we obtained for this particular image. So these two are the approaches that we have used for feature extraction from the keyframes. So after obtaining the features, we are concatenating the feature to build multiple feature, and we are storing this feature in the database. So the entire video is divided into number of shots, out of which we are extracting keyframes, and from each keyframe we are extracting multiple feature to build a feature vector. So during the offline phase, the query keyframe will undergo the same feature extraction procedure. After that, we will establish a distance measure. In the proposed method, we have used Euclidean distance to retrieve the most similar videos. This is the data set that I have considered. This contains 11 action categories with 1,597 videos in total, with 320 into 240 frame dimension. So this is the description of the data set, where each category contains more than 100 videos. The performance evaluation metrics used are precision and recall, where precision represents number of similar shots retrieved correctly divided by total number of retrieved shots, and recall is nothing but a number of similar shots which are retrieved correctly by number of similar shots in the database. So this is the result where we can see that the proposed method outperforms the existing method in terms of average precision score. This precision score is for top 10 retrieval. So when the ranking of the retrieval increases, this precision goes decreases. So the same has been depicted graphically here. So to conclude, I would like to say that the proposed multi-feature video retrieval approach performs better when compared to the state-of-the-art algorithm in terms of average precision score for the taken UCF YouTube action data set. So in future, we want to analyze the proposed algorithm considering the motion feature of the video sequence.
Okay, Nandini, thank you.
These are some of the references.
Nandini, my question is that how is your work is different from the activity recognition? Ultimately, your objective is to do something by feature extraction and manipulation to identify the activities.
Yeah, instead of query as a text, we are using query by example. We are using keyframe as a query in order to retrieve a particular shot from the database.
Okay, so what you are doing at the given video, you want to just want to retrieve the shot or duration of the video where that activity is performing. That is the objective?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. From my side, I feel it is a good work. You should continue.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you so much, Nandini.
Thank
Our
you.
next presenter is Ms. Aisha Hakim. Her paper is about identification of breast abnormality from thermograms based on fractal geometry features. Hello, Ms. Aisha. Aisha, hello.
Hello.
Yeah, you can start now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, should I share my screen, ma'am?
Yes, sure.
Hello.
Yes, you can start.
Yes, just a second. I'm just trying to. So I hope my full screen is available to everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. My topic is identification of breast abnormality from thermograms based on fractal geometry features, paper ID 471, and I am Aisha Hakim from VJTI Mumbai. So this is the flow of my presentation. I'll be briefly talking about some about breast oncology and what is thermal imaging, what is the motivation behind this work and the objectives. Fractal features, because I mentioned in the title itself that it is based on fractal features. So what are those and the results and observations, and then we conclude. So the motivation is basically that 1 out of 8 Indian women are affected by breast cancer throughout their life. So, and there is no cure. So the only way to curb the disease and to increase the patient survival rate is by early screening. Now there are already existing methods which I use to screen breast, which I have listed down, but thermography is an emerging one. The benefits of thermography being that there's no radiation used, whereas mammography, which is one technique commonly used to screen breast, it has radiation involved. So this is the basic difference between mammograms and thermograms. So mammograms are basically grayscale images and thermograms are color images, which actually give you information about the vascular changes going on in the breast, whereas mammography is a more structural information giving image. And there is radiation involved where there is compression of breasts involved in mammograms, whereas thermograms is simply capturing an image of the breast. So it is much more comfortable for the patients as well. So the basic rationale behind it is that our body is bilaterally symmetric in terms of temperature. So when there's something abnormal going on inside the body. There's asymmetry in temperature and there's deviation from the normal temperature. So this deviation in the normal temperature is what we are going to use to separate the breasts as normal or abnormal. So basically the aim is that the patient does not have to undergo mammography. So we want to reduce the number of patients undergoing mammography so that they are safe from the radiation exposure. So the objective of this work is that we want to use fractal features for analyzing the patterns and the complex patterns that we get from the abnormal breast to predict some abnormality. So main contributions of this work are: we first extract the fractal features from the thermograms. So we have used the database of Mastology Research, which is DMR. Now, this was actually collected from the Hospital of Federal University of Pernambuco, Brazil. So there are about 240 benign cases, benign thermograms, and 47 thermograms of malignant patients. Second is classification of thermograms into healthy or sick based on fractal indices. And the third contribution is that we compare our results with the ones that we already obtained in our previous study, where we have used statistical and texture features. So this study is about fractal features. We have already published one study with statistical and texture features. So we are just going to compare to find out which features are more suitable to use to classify these thermograms. So the hypothesis is that fractal dimension can be used as a tool for classification. So basically all the papers and literature that we saw up till now, these features were used for mammograms and for detecting brain tumor using MRI images. So we found only one paper which used it for thermogram. So that is why that was the aim of exploring. Now, also before this study, we have also sent this as a publication for a journal. So basically what we try to do are, these are the thermograms and we want to extract the abnormal pattern out of it. And these abnormal patterns are what we will be extracting our fractal features from. So now, considering the time and given that this itself is like a huge, because here we have actually compared like 4 or 5 methods of segmentation and which gives the best. So this was a flowchart of that previous study, using which from the breast thermal image, we are going to actually have binary segmented outputs. So these are the patterns of so if these patterns are symmetrical, then basically the breast is normal. If they are asymmetrical patterns, then there is some abnormality. So we are going to extract fractal features from these binary segmented outputs. So which are the fractal features? There are 3 fractal features: Hurst coefficient, fractal dimension, and lacunarity. So these are the ones which we are going to extract from the binary images that I showed you. So these are the binary images from which I'm going to extract the fractal features. So basically what happens is there are textural differences because of the increased metabolism that is shown in the thermogram. So using those, we are going to quantify those textural differences in terms of fractal features. So let's go to the first one, fractal dimension. It is also called as box counting dimension. So basically it sees it looks for irregular geometries and how that pattern changes with the scale of observing window. So basically I'm going to pass boxes throughout the image of different sizes, and throughout those boxes I'm going to count how many white pixels are there, because white pixels are the information in my case. So that is called as box counting method. So we are going to see how the pattern is going to change as the grid keeps on changing. So we will have box size of 2 by 2, 4 by 4, and so on, and we will analyze what happens as the grid size changes. So it was observed that values for fractal dimensions for healthy cases were found to be 1, whereas for abnormal it was greater than 1. Now this was found by Tawakol, but this study was for brain tumor MRI. So we have used this formula for fractal dimension, but this limit takes a lot of time to converge, and that is why there's an alternative solution which we have used. So this is actually of the form y is equal to ax plus b. So a basically is the d, which will be the slope y by x. So this is so we will basically fit this line using regression, using least square method, and that slope of the equation will actually give us the d, which is the fractal dimension. So basically how box counting is done is, we imagine that our pattern, that black and white binary pattern, is laid on a grid. So that grid is going to have different square sizes, and every time we are going to count the number of boxes in that grid that cover that white part or the white pixels, which are information for us, and then we are going to plot it on a log versus log scale. Now what is this log? I mean, what is
Aisha, you just explained everything in very brief, because We don't have much time to discuss in detail. Very
Okay.
brief. Okay, go ahead very briefly.
Okay, so I have plotted log 1 by s. S is the square size and ns is the number of boxes that it has counted for different sizes that are varying. So we get a line. So we basically have fit this using regression, using least square methods, linear regression, and the slope of this line. So for this one, we have found it out to be 1.55. So this is just a sample screenshot for one of the cases. So we get 1.55. And then the second fractal feature is Hurst coefficient, which is given by this formula. So it is simply 2 minus the dimension, fractal dimension that we have observed. So it is observed that in normal cases, it is less than 0.5. For healthy cases, it is greater than 0.5. Lacunarity is the third fractal feature, third and the last feature. So this accounts for the heterogeneous gaps or holes that are there in the patterns. Okay, so when there are abnormal patterns, there are larger holes, which leads to a larger, higher lacunarity value, and homogeneous gaps for a normal case will lead to lower lacunarity values. So basically, we are capturing the probability of how these gaps are occurring with every box, changing box size. Now, the method that is used for calculating lacunarity is similar to box counting, but it is box gliding method, in which boxes overlap as they keep on passing from every row to row and column throughout the image. So here in this sampling, what happens is some
Ma'am,
portion of the
sorry
image.
to interrupt you, but you already have exceeded the time. So I request you to kindly come to the conclusion.
Okay, I'll just show the results. So for a normal case, you get parallel lines of lacunarity if you separate the left and right breast. And for abnormal case, which is the left plot, you will get intercepting plots. So basically, what we have done is all these features we have extracted and fed it to a different machine learning algorithms. So this table is just showing us all the three parameters for a normal and an abnormal case. So as we can see, there's considerable difference between normal and abnormal cases. That is a healthy and abnormal side. So these features basically can be used to classify the images into normal and abnormal. That is what we are establishing through this research. And all those features that we extracted, we have simply fed it to 4 different machine learning algorithms, out of which Naive gives us the best accuracy of 94.53. These are the confusion matrices for all the different methods. And this is the ROC plot. As an additional thing, what we have done is we have just compared our results with the related studies. So as I mentioned earlier, there was only one paper that actually worked on thermograms using fractal analysis, and they have also done work on texture analysis. Like even our study, we have done work on texture analysis as a previous study, and this work is about fractal. But the thing is that we have used 287 images from the DMR database, which is publicly available, and they have created, the other researchers have created their own database, which is not available publicly, and they have used 36 images, and these are the accuracies. So again, another conclusion is that texture and statistical images.
Aisha, 1 minute. I have one question. So
Yes.
whatever the pattern or whatever the feature you have extracted, that was the input to the various algorithm like SVM, logistic regression, KNN. Okay. So is it correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So as I hope you know, most of the algorithms are very sensitive against the range of the value. So mostly it is advisable in the machine learning to first normalize or standardize your all the features before applying any machine learning algorithm. Otherwise, the result will be highly biased.
Yes,
So,
yes.
like I have seen SVM okay, KNN not okay, and naive are the algorithms that are not sensitive against the range, but logistic regression and the KNN and the other algorithms that are very sensitive for the range. So, have you
We have done the
that or
normalization
normalized all those values or
before
not?
feed. Hello.
Yeah, please.
Yes, so normalization and data standardization is done before feeding it to the like the machine learning algorithms, because obviously, yes, otherwise we
Okay,
will get biased results.
which method you have applied?
We have just taken the mean, sir, of a normalization of all the values in the column.
Mean? No. Mean is not a normalization or standardization.
Basically, actually, so there's a function in Python which normalizes all the column values in the data, like the Excel sheet that you feed in.
No, actually, we have to decide whether normalize or whether to standardize. So it is not a thing that randomly we have to select, because various kind of normalization techniques are there, and these are the features to the algorithm. So when you claim the algorithm X is the better one and the best result, it
Mhm.
may be biased. It may be because of your normalization method. So always be very careful when you play with the features, especially we have a, once you have a feature, once you play with the feature, you must be very careful because the technique you are adopting for the normalization or standardization or whatever the way you want, it may give a high impact on the performance of the further algorithms.
Yes, yes.
Here, anybody can put the questions on the validity of the results. So
Okay.
it is only a discussion. So you may in the future you can adopt all those things.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So these are the results, and we have compared it with the previous study. And the observations are that there's a noticeable difference in all the feature values, so they can be used for classification.
Okay, Aisha,
And
thank you. Say anybody else want to ask some question or discussion, please. It's welcome. Otherwise, you should off. You should close the presentation. Arsa, please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Aisha. Our next presenter is Mr. Bhanu Lalit Akash Meduri. His topic is about design and analysis of a blockchain-based resale marketplace.
Hello, everyone.
Hi. You can
Am I
start.
audible?
Yes, yes.
It says that someone else is sharing the screen. Can I go ahead and share?
Yes, yes, you can.
Okay. Is my screen visible now?
Yes, totally visible.
That's nice. So, hi everyone. So, I'm Lalit Meduri, and our research is about the design and analysis of a blockchain-based resale marketplace. And the authors of this research include Siddhartha Ghosh, who is the head of the Department of Artificial Intelligence, and myself, Lalit Meduri, who am a third-year undergraduate in computer science and engineering, and we're both from Vidya Jyoti Institute of Technology. So the problem statement is the problem with the existing marketplaces are that the resale and exchange of items carry high risk and uncertainty, which means you just cannot be so confident when you go out in the marketplace to purchase or exchange items. And because of this uncertainty and high risk, fraudulent sellers and misleading item listings cause huge losses to consumers of digital marketplaces. So anyone can claim that they have an item, but when they actually go out and try to make the sale, the item description might not exactly match the listing description, which can cause huge losses and also a waste of time. So what we did in this research is propose a design for a blockchain-based resale marketplace, which is decentralized and trustworthy, which are inherently the properties of a blockchain. And we have utilized smart contracts, micro escrows, and a smart clock secured point of exchange to make the sale, and which ensures that the risk and uncertainty are relatively lower than the traditional marketplaces. The potential impact of this solution is that the identity will remain anonymous in a decentralized marketplace, which is ensured by pseudo-anonymous addresses. And an alternate method of payment can be used to make the purchase, which is cryptocurrency in this case, which ensures privacy, which is not entirely private. I mean, there's always a problem of linkability with cryptocurrency, but it also ensures that the whole system is decentralized, which means no one entity is in control of the entire marketplace or the entire network. So no one can write their own rules in this case. The ledger, which is the blockchain, is public and immutable, which means if there are any malicious participants who have done something wrong or something that is not bound by the law, bound by the rules enforced by smart contract, it's easy to identify them and hold them accountable. And blockchain inherently provides that the identity is pseudo-anonymous, which means you don't need to register fill forms, or submit any personal data to get yourself registered. And now the applications of a decentralized marketplace can be are a wide range of applications, which include resale of personal collectibles, exchange and sale of rare items, and transfer of ownership of items. And now, the existing solutions like Ola and Quicker, what they do is expect you to register into their platform and then make your listing, which is then censored. All these applications are censored, which means you cannot just put anything that you want. And once you post an item for listing, they take time to verify. They take time to see if the listing is
Lalit,
legitimate.
Lalit, you need to understand you have 8 minutes only. In 5 minutes already over. Within a 3 minute, you have to discuss all your technical contribution. Still, we are waiting to listen your technical contribution.
Yes, sir. So in short, this is a very centralized marketplace, which means you have to be bound by those rules. You have to follow those rules. And now, what a blockchain ensures that the system is decentralized, which means no one can control the network and it's privacy preserving, and the rules are enforced by a smart contract and not by the entity itself. Now, our design ensures that our design provides the sellers to list an item in the smart contract, which makes the listing available. Buyer can browse through the items and can make a bid on the item. He can essentially lock in the amount to view the item. And once the buyer logs in the amount, he will be allowed to visit the point of exchange where the item is actually being stored for the buyer to view it. And when the buyer goes to the point of exchange, he can then verify his identity with the Ethereum address that he has used to submit the bid. And once that address is verified, which is verified by the smart contract, once that address is verified, he can view the item. And once he views the item, he can make an informed decision of whether or not to purchase the item. And if he goes ahead with the purchase, the funds that are logged in will be released to the seller. And in case he's not satisfied with the item, or if it does not match the description, he can simply withdraw from the offer, which will release the funds back to the buyer himself. And now this is the illustration of the application. So the buyer as so this all this happens after the buyer locks in the amount in the smart contract. He visits the location to view the item. He provides the Ethereum address to prove that he is the buyer. So the smart contract here will verify if this address is the address that is used to lock in the amount. And then this ensures that only the buyer can view the item and not anyone else.
Lalit, you should conclude it fast. Please conclude it.
Yes. So if the buyer is not interested in the item, he can always withdraw from the offer, which will make the item available for any other buyer to view and browse. And when we're analyzing this application, it brings one point of centralization where the consequential decisions can only be made by a particular group of people. And then costs and trade-offs include that the community-owned boxes of different sizes are required. And then the limitations of this application, as we realize it now, is there are two limitations, which is it requires initial funds and also active community participation to keep the policy up to date. And then we're exploring different blockchain solutions, and we feel that Algorand at this point serves our purposes the best. At this point, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Oh, Lalit, I have simple question. What degree you are pursuing, BTech or MBA? What degree you are pursuing?
I'm pursuing BTech in computer science and engineering.
So what technically you have learned? I was waiting to see something. What technically you have learned?
So there are so many things that I've learned from this research technically. So one of that includes how a blockchain is effectively used and how the decentralized property of blockchain can be leveraged to create a better solution than the existing traditional marketplaces. So with the decentralized nature of blockchain, we can ensure that no single entity is in control of the marketplace, which means there's no censorship and no one can stop any particular item from being listed in the blockchain, which ensures availability and access to it.
Like one design concept you have just explained. So any other way to prove it? Your designing, your flow chart, your way of doing is better than the existing. How can you prove it? Your concept is better.
Well, I can. So the research involved analyzing the existing solutions and comparing it with the solution that we have proposed here. And we feel that our solution is better because one, the identity of the sellers and the buyers will remain anonymous, which means no one can ever know who you are, or no one can know if they can track you. So the
Lalit, very good.
identity of
Lalit, okay, just I just wanted to convey that these all are very good and all are qualitative measure you are explaining. You for a better future, for a better work, you need to think about how quantitatively you can prove your work is better. So
sure.
because the community, most of the time, most of the way, the people believe on the quantity, not qualitative measures. So whether at the level of your, I think your third year or third semester.
Third year, sir.
Okay, you have a good work and good study you have done and very good. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Akash. And now our next presenter is Mr. Shahrukh Khanvi. His paper is about an analytical approach for the correction of optical readable answer sheets using NLP.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Let me share the screen. Is my PPT visible?
Yes, it is.
Yes. My paper title is an analytical approach for the correction of optical readable answer sheets using NLP. My co-author is Anish Kumar Deepak Suresh and Prasanna Kumar CV, who's an assistant professor of Amrita School of Arts and Sciences, Cochin. Now, talking about my paper, over the pandemic situation, the major issues faced by the organizations and schools were conducting the exams and correcting the answer sheets. As you know, even though there are multiple online platforms to conduct the exams, we were not so much confident to conduct the exam through online platforms. Why? Because the students are supposed to write their exams using their own systems, and the chances of doing frauds is higher. And the most of the systems in the online technologies are keyword based, where the major problem we found was there can be only one word answers, like fill in the blanks type of questions or MCQ kind of questions, which cannot determine an answer of a question of a posted. Okay, so we found that there are limitations in the type of questions. Only fill in the blanks or MCQ kind of questions could not determine the quality of an examination. So the evaluation of the answer is not accurate, because descriptive level answers are more important in this kind of conducting exams. So the major problem we found in this paper was when everything comes to keyword based system, the chances of keyword injection is higher. Keyword injection, for an example, let it be a question like, what is India? So the normal answer should be India as a country, where Delhi is the capital, a simple answer. It is a valid answer, and the keywords like India country and Delhi capital are supposed to be getting positive grades. But if a student writes an answer like India country, where Delhi capital, which means the sentence is not in a complete form, but still, even though there is the keywords, he will be getting positive credits. I mean, good marks. So the major problem is, due to the keyword injection, the student is supposed to get the marks he do not deserve. So we came up with an idea where the questions can be The answer should be written, conducted by the written form, where an OCR or optical character recognition technique can be used to transfer the hard copy written answers to a soft copy, a digital form, where the questions have to be segmented based on the question number. After the analysis of the answers, the answer is analyzed by a method called analyzing the semantic similarity. Semantic similarity is not like known as it is the measuring of distance between two words and how they are related, simply the meaning. For an example, a car is related to a bus, where it is also related to a road or a city, because they do have a meaning or a similarity in between. So by this method, we can identify whether a sentence is in a complete form or a meaningful form. By that method, we can understand that whether the student have used a keyword injection over here or not. So that while using this methodology, we can actually completely avoid keyword injection in the answers of students. And also using this NLP system.
Shahrukh Khan,
Yes, ma'am.
let me ask one question. Your answer sheet in what? The handwritten answer sheet or the digital copy means by using keyboard we have to write?
Actually, we have to write the answers by handwritten, by hand.
Means the things you have to scan, then upload somewhere, then you have to identify the words and sentence.
Yes, sir.
Oh, so have you tried all these? Have you tried all these things in the real life?
Sir, actually, we didn't have that much hardware requirement, so we just did a small part, because the OCR detection and segmentation is already present in the current world, which is not a big problem. But the analyzing of the semantic.
What I know, if somebody is written on the answer sheet, so identifying the spelling and the words is not a trivial task, I think so. The first stage itself a very challenging work. Once you are able to extract the word, then another process you can apply like a grammar, tokenization, and many things else.
Yes, sir.
Through the handwritten copy, identifying digit is a different thing. Identifying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, B, C, D, that is a very simple work.
Yeah.
Identifying the complete word, group of sentence, I need to think, but you should try at least just write one page and try to do all those things.
Yes, sir.
Have you done all those things?
So I did with one paragraph, and it was mostly accurate. But some sentences were wrong. Still, it was more accurate.
Because why I'm saying, because the NLP you are using, NLP is very sensitive against the spelling. Means VIVEK, suppose RAM or REM, totally different. So if I am writing the RAM and through the scanning, some noise definitely will be there. So your system may read it like REM. So when IE, TL, TI, that are so similar word. So with handwritten, it's very difficult to identify where is the I, where is the L, where is the T. So once your system is not 100% accurate to identify the word spelling, the whole system will collapse ahead. Because semantically, he has to identify the meaning. If the word spelling is different, I think it will be blunder for a system to identify all those things. So I'm not just discouraging you. I'm just thinking out the challenges and the complexity of the work when the handwritten things are there. That's why the first question I have asked.
Okay, sir.
Go ahead. Work always be a challenging work should be there, but keep all these complexity in the mind.
Okay, sir.
Because you might have thinking what I want to convey. The input is wrong, then the whole procedure will not work for you.
Yes, sir.
That is my concern only. Otherwise, good. Okay, go ahead. So just discuss your results. That is fine. Whatever the results you have got, that result discuss, please.
Okay, sir. By using the same technique, the NLP, we can check the grammar also. And after that, paragraphs are tokenized into words, and the root form of the words, like
That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. We know the tokenization and grammarization and all those things. That's okay. What the
Yes, sir.
results you are obtaining, that's we want to see only.
Yeah, okay, sir.
Go ahead, go. Like you have written in the previous slide, valid sentence. Valid sentence means what? Where is the
Valid-
dot? Like,
valid
where is
sentence
the
is
comma? Where is the question mark? Like that. So in the handwritten, it is very difficult to identify where is the dot, where is not a dot.
yes, sir.
So that is the input. If is given like that, then very easy work. Then you can do it.
Okay,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah.
Actually, we have a small piece of code over here where we are giving the paragraph as
Yeah,
digital.
that is the problem, Saruk. That is the problem. This is the things you return directly. You cannot
Yes,
get all these sentence through the scan copy.
yes, sir.
That is the big challenge. Once the things are in the digital format, the things become very trivial. But my question is that if things are written in the copy, how can you extract that sentence?
Yes, sir.
Super duper difficult task, that is only. Once you have this sentence, easily you can do everything. So can you show me anything that are really you are extracted from the scan copy and converted into the digital sentence? That I want
I
to see.
don't have the paper right now.
Hmm?
No, I don't have that right now.
Oh. So just conclude your work conclusion and just for your future work, try to like that in the real environment. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay,
Okay.
sir.
Go ahead. Fast.
Uh, for the conclusion, the performance of the evaluation marking sheet is deeply analyzed and reviewed with paving the path for the future development. Means the evaluation of the paper takes more time and effort, but using the system, it can be it reduces the time and effort a lot. And the major drawback of existing system is that the keyword injection is possible so that the students can get much more mark which they don't deserve. But using this technique where students can get good positive marks for only the valid sentence and whether it is grammatically correct and the keywords are also present. So that is the major advantage of this system. So keyword injection is avoided entirely from the sentence by using the NLP systems, and it can be used for the current system, current situations for evaluating the answer sheets. So that's also. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Shahrukh Khan. Our next presenter is Ms. Mahsa Mirla-Sare. Her paper is about open challenges of communication security in an IoT environment survey. I guess she is not available. Never mind. So moving ahead with the closing remarks, I sincerely thank our authors for their excellent presentation and contribution in this session, and all our participants for being a part of this international conference. I hope this session was productive enough. All the presenters would be getting their digital certificates through email within 2 working days. Further, all the papers have already forwarded to the Springer, and the publication will be live within 5 to 6 months. So kindly cooperate with the team of ICTIS 2021. I also thank our session chair, Dr. Vivek Tiwari and Dr. Pramod Patel for chairing the session. A token of appreciation to the chair on behalf of the team ICTIS 2021 and Global Knowledge Research Foundation. Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable presence.
Thank you, Harsa and all.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you. So please share all the certificates, the email ID also.
Yeah, sure, sir. Also, I request you all to on the camera so we can take a quick snapshot for our virtual conference.
So Harsa, please convey my thanks to Amit ji and Barod ji also. Okay. So
yes, sir, sure.
Normally I used to visit all your conferences, but nowadays it is happening. We are not able to move. So convey my thanks to them all.
Yes, sir, sure, definitely. Great. Thank you so much. The room is open for 1 minute if anyone have Q&A.
Okay, Harsa, I need a permission to leave it now because I have some other.
Yes, sir. Sure. Goodbye and take care. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.